Caroline Levitt for more on all of this. So the president really went off in The Hague in his news conference on reporting that these strikes may not have done the job here in Iran at the Fordow nuclear facility and others as well. He also took aim at the outlets that were reporting this. Listen here.
Patriots, I hope you're sitting down, because what I'm about to break down will shake the foundations of everything the mainstream media wants you to believe. We're talking about President Trump's historic takedown of Iran's nuclear threat and the disgraceful attempt by the fake news machine to bury this victory beneath a mountain of lies.
They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out.
So this is a report from the DIA that Fox has confirmed. It was, quote, preliminary and expressed low confidence in the findings. And yet it was all over the news yesterday. It was all the headlines yesterday. What do you say in response?
That's right, John. And President Trump is absolutely right. And he returns to Washington today after a historic NATO summit where he has gotten our NATO allies to finally pay their fair share thanks to his strong leadership on the world stage. And I'd like to take a step back and just acknowledge the history that has been made in the course of the last week thanks to President Trump's strength. 5 days ago, the rogue Iranian regime possessed the capability to create a nuclear weapon that threatened the United States, the state of Israel, and the entire world. And presidents for decades have said, dating back to Bill Clinton, that Iran cannot possess a nuclear weapon. And because of the decisive leadership of President Trump and the skill and the excellence of our United States military, that imminent threat to the United States and the world has been demolished because of the successful operation on Saturday night. And not only that, but within the span of 48 hours, President Trump was able to turn around and negotiate a successful ceasefire between Israel and Iran, ending this war after just 12 days. No other president in history could have ever dreamed of such a success, and that's exactly why the fake news media is now trying to demean and undermine the president. And we've seen this playbook be run before. You have hostile actors within the intelligence community who illegally leak bits and pieces of an intelligence assessment to push a fake news narrative. And that's what the CNN story was yesterday. And it's not a coincidence that it was written by the exact same CNN reporter who wrote the original story, falsely alleging that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. The American public are smarter than this, and they should know the truth. President Trump completely and totally obliterated the capability of Iran to produce a nuclear weapon, and the world is safer today because of his historic efforts.
Here's the truth they don't want you to know. President Trump just obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons program, the Fordow and Natanz. Nuclear facilities gone, the enriched uranium buried under miles of rubble. And in just 48 hours, he brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, ending a war the left hoped would spiral out of control. Meanwhile, what did the media do? They ran with a leaked, unverified, low-confidence report and treated it like gospel. CNN, yes, the same outlet that LIED about the Hunter Biden laptop, was at it again, pushing a narrative designed to discredit Trump's success. Let me say it louder for the folks in the back. This was a political hit job. This was treasonous. Defense. Secretary Pete Hegseth nailed it. These leakers don't care about truth or national security. They care about making Trump look bad, even when he's making the world safer. We're talking about 30,000-pound bombs dropped with pinpoint precision. This wasn't a limited strike. Folks, this was a decapitation of Iran's nuclear threat.
So at that news conference in The Hague, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth went off on whoever leaked this and the media outlets that gobbled it up. Listen to what he said.
To spin it for their own political reasons, to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce?
Israel's Atomic Energy Commission had a completely different assessment of what happened at Fordow and Natanz than this preliminary low confidence assessment did. It said that the site was completely destroyed and that the nuclear program's been set back for years. I don't know if you saw it, but last hour we had former IAEA weapons inspector David Albright on, who said much the same thing.
Well, Secretary Hegseth is absolutely right. This was a low confidence preliminary intelligence assessment. The assessment itself said that it was not corroborated by anyone else in the intelligence community, and it has been disputed by not just the United States, the President, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, our Joint Chiefs, and our General Kane, who was incredibly successful in this mission on Saturday night. It was also disputed by both Israel and Iran. And CNN didn't care about that. The DIA themselves have now come out and said this was a preliminary report, and this CNN story got it completely wrong. But that reporter is a sheep, and she's a mouthpiece for people who don't like Donald Trump. And she only gave the White House an hour to respond. And that's, again, the same playbook we've seen the fake news media play time and time again. But this story has now been debunked widely by not just the United States, but also Iran and Israel as well.
All right, so there's the issue of reporting what was leaked, but then there's the idea of the leak itself. This was classified information. Here's what Steve Witkoff said about the leak.
Leaking that type of information, whatever the information, whatever site it comes out on, is outrageous. It's treasonous. So it ought to be investigated. There's no doubt that it was obliterated. So the reporting out there that in some ways suggests that we did not achieve the objective is just completely preposterous.
So Steve Witkoff says, and he's right in the middle of all of this and all these negotiations, said that this leak should be investigated. Will it be?
I am told by the FBI the leak already is being investigated, and it absolutely should be, because this was a top secret intelligence analysis that very few people in the United States government had access to see. And so I understand the FBI and the Department of Justice are already on this, as they should be. And just to emphasize what our great special envoy Witkoff said last night, for people with common sense, everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. It doesn't take an intelligence analysis to understand that means complete and total destruction and obliteration. And the President of the United States, because of his decisive leadership in directing that operation on Saturday night, has now achieved a goal that the United States and the whole world has wanted to achieve for years, and that's the obliteration of the capability of the Iranian regime to possess a nuclear weapon.
So there's one other question that remains out there, Caroline, and that's what happened to the nuclear material enriched to 60% that Iran already had in its possession. It's said to be about 900 pounds worth, enough for a number of bombs. The president believes that it was buried in one of those enrichment facilities. The director of the IAEA isn't so sure. Do you have evidence that you know exactly where it is?
I can tell you the United States had no indication that that enriched uranium was moved prior to the strikes, as I also saw falsely reported. But as for what's on the ground right now, it's buried under miles and miles of rubble because of the success of these strikes on Saturday evening. So anyone saying that they know just doesn't know. And what we do know is the capability of these weapons and the success of this strike, and the fact that the United States military hit their targets precisely, perfectly, and accurately, and we know what that means.
Well, again, David Albright, who's done this for a long time, knows what he's looking at, thinks that those bombs went down near ventilation shafts where the rock would have been less resistant than if you had just hit it out in the open, and he firmly believes that those centrifuge halls have been destroyed. So we'll see. Caroline Levitt, always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
The White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt for more on all of this. So the president really went off in The Hague in his news conference on reporting that these strikes may not have done the job here in
centrifuge holes
in Iran at the Fordow nuclear facility and others as well. He also took aim at the outlets that were reporting this. Listen here.
Well,
They
we're
said
not
it could
sure.
be limited or it
Of
could be
course
very
you're not
severe. They
sure,
really didn't
because
know,
you're
other
not
than to
looking
say
for the truth.
It could be
You're
limited
looking
or
for
it
a
could be very,
headline.
very severe.
Look, Patriots.
And you didn't choose
We've
to
seen
put
this
that
playbook
because it
before.
was very early
Leak
after.
it,
Since then,
twist
we've
it,
collected
run
additional
it through
intelligence. We've
CNN,
also spoken to
attack
people who
Trump,
have seen the site,
rinse and
the
repeat.
site, the
But
site
we
is
see through
obliterated.
IT,
And
the
we think
FBI
everything
and
nuclear is
DOJ
down there. They didn't
are
take it out.
investigating the leak.
So this is a
and they
report
should.
from the DIA
Whoever
that Fox
did
has
this
confirmed it was,
should be
quote,
tried for
preliminary
treason.
and
This was a
expressed low
monumental
confidence
win for
in
President
the
Trump,
findings.
for America,
And yet it
and
was
for
all over the
safety
news
of the
yesterday. It was
world.
all the headlines
But you
yesterday.
won't
What do you
hear
see in
that from
response?
MSNBC.
That's right,
You
John.
won't
And
read that
President
in the
Trump
New
is
York
absolutely
Times.
right. And
You'll
he
hear
returns to
from
Washington
real
today
Americans
after a
who still
historic
believe in truth,
NATO summit
strength,
where he
and
has
freedom.
gotten our
So
NATO
do your
allies
part,
to
like
finally
this
pay their
video,
fair share
share it
thanks
with
to
every
his
patriot.
strong leadership
You
on the
know,
world
and
stage.
hit
And I'd
that
like to take a
subscribe
step
button
back
and
and
bell
just
so we
acknowledge
can
the
keep
history that has
exposing
been
the
made
lies and
in the
shining
course of the
light on
last
the
week
truth.
thanks to
This
President
is
Trump's strength.
USA
5
News
days ago,
Today,
the rogue
and we'll
Iranian
never back
regime
down.
possessed the
God bless
capability to
America.
create a nuclear